All right, this is the first debate between the three candidates, George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, Stephen Wells. Each candidate's Republican candidates for the congressional seat being vacated by Congressman Richard Hanna. This is also being broadcast over WFXV, Fox 33. And we're going to go to panelist Jeff Manaski with the next question for the candidates. And we'll be starting with, I might have lost track. I think we're starting with Claudia on this one.
We are. I just want to follow up on Mark Baracco's last question, and it relates to immigration. We hear talk, it's a hot topic nowadays, about a wall on our southern border, whether it be a brick wall, a fence, or a virtually monitored area. I want to ask if you support a wall on our southern border, any of those options that I just mentioned, and what do we do with the millions of illegal immigrants who are currently in this country?
Right. I think actually I do support the concept of a wall, and I say that in quotes because I'm not sure that Donald Trump really means literally building a wall. I mean, he means building a wall across the border, whether it's a virtual wall, whether it's some kind of electronic surveillance. We do need to close the border. The definition of what a country is and what we stand for is to have borders. We are not a borderless world. A borderless world is what's caused us so many problems in this country. It's what's brought us, free trade agreements that aren't really free or fair, that have hurt the United States, we've lost jobs overseas. To me, we need to do whatever we can to secure that border and keep the people in the United States that want to be here, invite and, of course, bring over immigrants who want to live the American dream as was conceived by our founders. As to the immigrants that are here now, many of them need to be deported. They're here illegally, they're committing crimes, and those people need to go. Ultimately, they all should go, whether that's practical, but I think we should put in place a plan to have people who are not here legally, who are using our resources, taking jobs from our legal citizens. They need to go. They need to be removed from this country and come back legally. Whether they can have a path to citizenship, I don't support that, but maybe they can in the future if they pay their taxes, pay for their debts, pay for their any crimes they may have committed and their service. I mean, we want people here that are going to grow the American economy and live the American dream as we do. All
right, next up is Stephen Wells.
Yeah, well, look, we've got to deal with, as we just talked about in the last question, with illegal immigration. So clearly what we're doing is not effective. And there's no question that we have the capabilities today to put up a virtual wall using electronic means. It's done in other countries, and we have to secure the border. There's no question about that. So we've got to take measures to protect our borders. There's bad people that want to come in and hurt us. We can't deny it. The drugs are clearly, heroin is not, poppies are not grown in the United States. These drugs come in from other countries. And so there's no question we've got to have far more robust interdiction and security at the border.
And over to George Phillips.
And I laid out my responses to some of the parts of this question you've alluded to. The wall has been authorized already. It could be by electronic surveillance, as we'd mentioned. I do believe in E-Verify. But overall, this issue is a complete lack of willpower and responsibility by the United States government. This is a nation that mobilized in World War II to defeat Nazi tyranny and Japanese aggression. This is a nation that won the Cold War. This is a nation that put the man on the moon. We cannot secure our border here. This is just a lack of willpower here. The American people have spoken. They're very angry about this issue. We need to step up. We need to get the job done on securing the border, and it's a lack of willpower. I'm a history teacher. Article 1, Section 8 defines the powers of the federal government. The clear powers are national security, securing the border, and immigration law. We're doing a terrible job at immigration law right now, and we've received a wake-up call. The Washington establishment certainly has from the American public, and we need to respond. And I will respond and support efforts vigorously as a member of the United States Congress.
All right, Assemblywoman?
Yeah, this is my 45-second rebuttal.
Yes, it is. Each candidate gets an opportunity to rebuttal, and in some cases it does become repetitive. If you all agree not to do rebuttal, we can move on to the next question.
I would be happy to do a rebuttal because I'd like to address something that both of my opponents are talking about, the failed job in Washington, yet both of them are supported by the Washington establishment. I'm the only person in this race who is not supported by the Washington establishment. George Phillips ran twice and lost with the establishment at his heels and behind him with the wind at his sails. Same thing with Steve Wells. He is the establishment choice. The only person who's fought against the establishment, been elected against the establishment, is me. And I have taken my vote directly, my message to the voters, and you've put me in primary. I've won primaries in 6 of the 8 counties in this congressional district because I've stood against the establishment. And you have an opportunity to send someone who is going to finally call out the establishment in Washington, much like I have in Albany. And I appreciate people understanding what's really going on in this debate.
All right, Stephen Wells, rebuttal.
Sure. Well, somehow accusing me of being part of the establishment, somebody who's never run for anything before, is ludicrous. Somehow I'm responsible for the immigration problem in Washington. The fact is that Assemblywoman Tenney has been in Albany for 12 years. She's run for office 8 separate times. If people are happy with Albany and they're happy with Washington, well, then maybe she is the consummate Albany insider. So I've never been involved and I've never been a politician. So it's enough said about that.
All right, George.
Well, what Assemblywoman Tenney said is absolutely false. I'm an American history teacher. I'm not a Washington insider. When I ran for Congress, I took on a district that no one else wanted to run in. There was 43,000 more Democrats in my district. I was not getting money or support or even the time of day from the Washington establishment. It's been the same in this race. I'm here running hard. We have school students, high school students coming and volunteering in our office every day. They're in our campaign commercial. As I said in the commercial, if viewers haven't seen it, teaching high school can be rough, but it's nothing compared to Washington politicians. So what the Assemblywoman said is absolutely false, and what you said in your opening statement is absolutely false as well. I have nothing to do with all these ads that you're talking about here from this
You
group.
haven't condemned a single ad, and you know that these ads
It's
aren't
not-
true.
it's not her
You
time
know
now.
that you've had $600,000
Assemblywoman.
provided to you by the Washington establishment to
Assemblywoman.
It's not
run.
her time.
These are the rules that...
He's addressing the question to me.
Yes, but these are the rules that you guys agreed to.
You know it's false, and you
He's
keep
addressing
repeating it, and this is
They're
my
not
time.
false. I tell the truth, and the voters know it.
George, you still have time if you'd
Okay.
like. Go ahead.
Again, I have nothing to do with these ads here. Each candidate has to control their own message. I've been positive in all my campaign messages that I put out this far, in my ads and in our mail, and I'll continue to do so.
All right. Alex Gerald is with the Observer-Dispatch with the next question.
All right. Excuse me. In May, the Federal Education Department issued a directive that directed public schools to allow transgender students to use bathrooms matching their gender identity. Do you support this, and why?
And who goes next year?
This is Stephen Wells.
Stephen Wells. I've lost track. Stephen, you're up next.
Yeah, like so many other issues, I don't think that this is a role for the federal government. I don't know. For 150 years, people knew which bathroom to use. Enough said. The country's got some major problems here, and the reason I'm running is, as a business person, is to fix and to work on the economic problems, which after 30 years of job loss here in upstate New York with no help out of Albany, just the opposite, no help out of Washington, going in the wrong direction, that's what this country needs to be focusing on, not which bathroom to use.
George Phillips.
As a teacher and a dean of students, I've dealt with bullying issues, and sometimes those have issues we've encountered have dealt with gender identity. We need to speak out against bullying, especially that based on gender. But this was a complete overreach by the federal government here. This is something they didn't need to be involved with. This decision should be handled by local schools and parents and families and counselors in a private way. And it just adds on to a litany of executive orders, many of which have been flat out illegal by the federal government on immigration, trying to give amnesty to illegal immigrants, on health care, arbitrarily changing the health care law without the Congress. And in many other areas, we've had continued assault on the Constitution by this president. And we need to take a stand, and we need to stop. And this is just the latest in a series of attacks on the United States Constitution.
All right, Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yeah, speaking of bullying, these flyers contain people who are supporting both of my opponents. These are people, they're in their commercials, they're in the flyers. I am not the Albany insider. It's a joke to even say that. No one can say it seriously and even think about it. George, you've been endorsed by ACU. It's a social club. I'm endorsed by the State Conservative Party. It's a ballot line. It's the 3rd largest vote-getting line in the state. Those people know my position in Albany. They just issued an independent editorial showing that I am the quintessential Albany insider. That's why the people in Albany don't like me. That's why the Republican establishment, the corrupt Republican establishment, is behind you. You received hundreds of thousands of dollars, as you've mentioned in all of our campaign stops. You've received that from people in Washington. You have today, and so has Mr. Wells. As far as the transgender bathroom issue, it's bullying for us to try to take the federal government and force it on our local school districts. Let's have some dignity for all students, but not bullying our school districts and putting anyone in jeopardy who who opposes this. Religious freedoms need to be tolerated and need to be revered in our communities.
All right, each candidate receives the opportunity for a 45-second rebuttal, and we'll start with Stephen Wells.
Well, first of all, the accusations are false. The pictures that she's showing up, as she knows, I've not gotten any donation or any support from this organization. It's
Would
against
you
the law,
condemn
and it's
them?
again. Excuse me. And again, she's making accusations that are flat out false. It's against the law. She's a lawyer. She knows it's against the law. If she's got some proof, she better come up with it.
Okay, George Phillips.
I just wanted to come back to my endorsement from the American Conservative Union. I'm proud of it. This was the oldest and most well-respected conservative organization in the country. They were critical to the rise of Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan was critical to their rise. The state Conservative Party, I have great respect for. They make an endorsement in almost every race in the state on every level. Very few candidates in the country are endorsed by the premier conservative organization in the country, the American Conservative Union. I think this speaks to my leadership here, the bold vision that I've laid out. I went through a very tough interview process with members of the organization. I know there's a board that makes a decision. They've only highlighted a few candidates in the country for their endorsement, and I'm one of them, and I'm certainly very proud of that.
And Assemblywoman Tenney, a rebuttal.
Again, the American Conservative Union is not a ballot line in New York. They are a social club. They're a group of Bush Republicans who've decided that they wanted to, get involved and step on the Conservative Party of New York. Every single member of the executive board of the state Conservative Party endorsed me. I'm on the line. I will be on the ballot in November. I'm the only person in this room who will be on the ballot in November. And that's a significant endorsement because they know I'm independent. They've always endorsed me before the Republican Party failed to endorse me. They've stood by me. They stand for our conservative principles in New York. They're not a Washington-based establishment like ACU is. And, that's just, George was their candidate. He was their candidate in 2008 and 2010 when he lost. Had George won in 2010, this seat would probably be held by a Republican.
All right, next up, WTR's Mark Baracco has the next question, and it will first be delivered to George Phillips.
Okay. All right. So this next question deals with defense spending, but also with Veterans Affairs. We have, over the past few years, continued to spend more on defense. However, it seems as though there's a lot of people, specifically in our area, who are returning veterans that are having limited access to medical care and necessary resources for them becoming active members of society returning home from war. How do we combat this issue?
I'm an American history teacher. I have great respect for veterans. I was honored to have the endorsement for the former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and I was able to come to Rome and Utica with him, and I know so many men and women who wore the uniform, who are veterans, live in this community now. It is an absolute disgrace that veterans died waiting for service anywhere in the country, whether it be Arizona or veterans who are not getting the service they deserve here. I believe that we need to support the VA system and continue to support it vigorously, but for any veteran that's waiting in line and is not getting service, they should be brought to the front of the line at the nearest hospital if they're in a backlog. We need to put our veterans first. I'm honored to have a major endorsement from veterans, and they will be a major focus of my efforts in Congress. As President Lincoln said, we need to care for those who bore the battle and their widow and their orphan, whether it be from the last of the greatest generation to our Vietnam and Korean veterans to those who are serving in our current conflicts.
Assemblywoman Tenney.
As a mother of an active duty Marine, this is a very important issue to me. I've represented in court veterans who have been denied their benefits from the VA for a number of reasons. It's a very serious issue. Veterans must be given the care, whether it's a voucher, they should have access to all of our healthcare facilities. It's something that's very important to me. Obviously, it's one of the most important roles we play as a member of Congress because of the importance of this position as a congressperson and dealing with veterans issues. Border security and national defense are the number one reasons that our founders created this Constitution. And finally, with all due respect, George, the guy who endorsed you was a Bush establishment crony who has gone on to be a lobbyist, and he owes $6 million that he's taken from vets and other people. And the people need to know that. He is not someone I would accept an endorsement from. I would accept an endorsement from numerous veterans organizations and people who are fighting to protect our vets, not someone who's been part of the establishment. Again, someone who is taking money as a lobbyist now after parlaying his time in Washington.
Stephen Wells.
Well, I've spent my time here in the last few months traveling around the district, and I held numerous forums with vets to hear firsthand about some of these issues. And I can tell you, it just points up again an utter failure. And this is why people are so upset with government. It's an utter failure of, in this case, our federal government and how they're handling the VA. And this has gone on for years. And this is why people are so angry. We take our hard-earned tax dollars to take care of our veterans, which has to happen. And we're not efficient. I think we need more business people, frankly, in Washington and less bureaucrats.
And if each candidate receives the 45-second rebuttal, and George Phillips will start.
I just think this is what people are sick of in politics here, the name calling. Assemblywoman Tenney just insulted a Vietnam veteran who's been held up as a great leader for veterans in our nation and has served this nation very honorably. The focus should not be name calling and attacking different groups and different people, but where we are on the issues, and I've stood boldly for veterans. I think that's why I got the support. I would like to address the second part of the question about spending in general. I believe in peace through strength. I believe in a vigorous national defense. We do need more efficiency in spending, and I've called for a modern-day grace commission. Ronald Reagan had a grace commission, which had business leaders coming in and scouring for waste. Later, hopefully in the questioning, I'll have a chance to elaborate on this more, but we do need more efficiency in government. We do need solutions. We don't need name-calling and attacks, personal attacks.
Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yeah, George, with all due respect, this has been nothing but a name-calling personal attack event against me throughout this campaign. The people want the truth, and I am telling them the truth. I just wouldn't accept it. I would not accept an endorsement from someone that was part of the establishment and was taking money from veterans. There's a story in the LA Times all about this man and how he owes $6 million that he's taken through insurance claims from veterans. That's just the truth. It's not name-calling. I care about our veterans. My son is active duty. He will be a retired veteran someday. We have many people in this community who worked and served this country honorably at Griffiths Air Force Base and from around the country. We need to protect them. We need to provide them with the care that they need. And we don't need Washington politicians or establishment people to come in and tell us who we should vote for. We should vote for the people who've been here for us, the people who are serving, and the people who know what our issues are.
And Stephen Wells, rebuttal.
Well, just for the record, I've never called the Assemblywoman any names, and we need business people down in Washington who can solve these incredible problems that the country has regarding the economy, regarding taking care of our veterans. We don't need more politicians. We're going to go back and forth fighting about names. This is ludicrous. Let's focus on national security and the economy, the two issues of our day.
All right, next up is Jeff Manaski with a question. We're going to keep going. We'll be taking a break after this series, WIBX Utica Rome. This is the Republican debate for the congressional seat, which is currently being held by Congressman Richard Hanna. Jeff Manaski.
Thank you.
First question goes to Assemblywoman Tenney.
Thank you very much. New York's minimum wage currently $9 an hour. It's scheduled to rise in New York City to $11 an hour by the end of this year, and $9.70 an hour here upstate by the end of this year, and incremental increases in the years ahead that may create a difficult situation for many businesses in New York State. As a federal representative, would you support raising the federal minimum wage?
First, let me say, Steve keeps saying that I'm a politician, not a business owner. I've been running our family business for the last 25 years. I am a business owner. We've never had a state contract. Steve Wells has taken millions in state contracts from the state of New York and giving money to Andrew Cuomo in exchange for those. I don't know if it's pay to play, but it sure looks like that to me. If you really care about these issues, why would you support Governor Cuomo when he was pushing the minimum wage last year and he pushed it against this year and he shoved it down the throats of our business community and, more importantly, our family farms? This is going to be devastating to our family farms. And as a member of Congress, I will not raise the minimum wage. It's something that government should not be getting involved with. We need to protect our citizens by growing our government, or by growing our communities and our businesses, taking government taxes, regulations, minimum wage, all these things imposed on us by the government, by Cuomo, particularly in New York State. He's raised New York's wage to one of the highest wages in the nation. Somebody asked Steve Wells, please, why would you give $10,000 to Andrew Cuomo last year if you don't support his policies? Why?
Stephen Wells.
Well, the Assemblywoman loves to throw stones, but the fact of the matter is she doesn't get her facts right. Our company does not have millions in contracts, and she knows that. And in fact,
true.
and she's making a
Cuomo's biggest donor.com.
Well, excuse me, Bill. Who gets to speak now?
Assemblywoman, that's Stephen Wells' time.
Okay, so the fact of the matter is that she's making allegations of pay to play. There's utterly no proof of this. It's utter complete falsity and nonsense. And there are accusations that I support the governor are totally false. I voted for and supported Rob Astorino. I raised money for Rob Astorino, who ran against him. But to answer your question, which I think is the reason that we're here, is about the minimum wage. And the way I look at that is a business person is we have to understand all these things that the federal government's doing in Albany, is it making us more competitive or less competitive? And my argument for so many of these things is that they are making us less competitive. This is the fundamental reason why jobs have fled New York State for over 30 years, because our state is uncompetitive compared to other states. And now that is happening to the whole United States. Jobs are fleeing outside the country and have been because the country is becoming uncompetitive. And so you have to analyze these questions, not whether they're just nice to do. It's nice to raise everybody's wages. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? But will it make us more competitive so that we can grow jobs here? We need a business person down in Washington. We don't need more politicians.
And George Phillips.
I absolutely oppose raising the minimum wage. This is something that's going to hurt poor people. Jobs are going to be cut under this scenario. There'll be less money to raise wages of entry-level employees who are trying to get to those mid-level management positions. So it is going to hurt poor people. It's going to hurt the economy. It's going to send more jobs out of New York. I want to focus on my upstate jobs plan, tax and regulatory relief for small businesses that helps create jobs and grows this economy. We have one of the highest tax and regulatory systems in the world. Our businesses, our corporate tax rate, the effective rate is one of the highest in the world. We have 178,000 pages of regulation on the U.S. code that's costing American businesses and productivity $1.9 trillion a year. We need to focus on our businesses that are here. We need to lift up the entrepreneurial spirit. My upstate jobs plan will do that, and this is what we need to focus on, not things that are going to hurt the economy and lead to more people leaving New York, more of my students, more of our family, more of our friends.
45-second rebuttal, starting with Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yeah, I own a business, and it is a frustrating situation to be a small business owner in New York, especially one that relies on other small businesses, not the government, for government jobs and government contracts. Mr. Phillips says that he supports an upstate jobs plan. His plan includes, he says he teaches the Constitution, but there's a violation of the 10th Amendment with one of his job plans. He wants to create empowerment zones. Those are the same old empire zones and things that we've already had in here in New York. And Steve, you said that you don't support Cuomo, but you say right on your website you support Cuomo's budgets that I opposed. I have opposed all of Cuomo's budgets. So if you oppose the budgets, why give him $10,000 last year? And yes, if you go to cuomosbiggestdonor.com, you will see the contracts that Steve has from the state controller's office, his company, that are millions of dollars. So those are facts. They aren't untrue.
And Stephen Wells, 45 seconds.
Well, I don't support Cuomo's budgets. There's not one shred of truth to that. There's nothing that I've ever said anywhere that I've supported Cuomo. Again, I supported his opponent, Rob Astorino, and our company gave money to Rob Astorino, and I personally raised money for Rob Astorino, so it's utter nonsense. And this website, of course, is something that the Assemblywoman has created, or her people have created. It's utter nonsense. And once again, we need business people. I'm the only one standing up here who's actually created over 1,000 jobs. Okay, over 650 of which here in upstate New York. I've actually gotten relocated people from Texas to upstate New York, as opposed to people leaving upstate New York and going down south. This is what we need. We need business people in Washington. We don't need Albany politicians in Washington.
George Phillips, final rebuttal on this one.
I agree.
My plan is not empire zones. My plan is Ronald Reagan supply-side economics, lift up the entrepreneurial spirit. Look at what got us going in the 1980s, that brought back this economy, that lifted up the great vehicle of American opportunity in the American economy and helped us win the Cold War. That's what my plan is based on, and we're going to fight for it in Washington. Let's lift up entrepreneurs. We also have an opportunity here. I've called for ending capital gains cuts on investors in empowerment regions. Look at what we have in Marcy here. Look at what we have at the Rome Labs. We need private sector investment and capital in the high-tech area in upstate New York. That's what my plan is. My plan is the best of what Ronald Reagan had. This is empowering the American people and lifting up the entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, we've been through our first hour and just a little bit. We are in the midst of a debate between George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, Stephen Wells, each vying for the Republican nod for the NY-22, the seat currently being held by Congressman Richard Hanna. We'll come back for the final hour. We'll break and give these guys about 4 minutes, as we will you probably could use a little bit of time. We'll come right back here at WIBX.